Converting a RAMPS 1.4 to 24 volts, everybody did it, everybody made a video, so why am I? Well, because I do it slightly different than a lot of movies I've seen, a lot of clips on YouTube I've seen. Quickly to the RAMPS itself. I've taken off the connector because it's notoriously bad. I've taken off the fuses because I have a different fusing system in place, and one of these old fuses is supposedly not capable to handle the 24 volts. So gone are the fuses. I've soldered in place two sort of jumper wires. They're actually 5 amp diode wires. I cut the diode off and used the ends. So that's all shorted. We should always be careful that the capacitors, the little cans on there, are rated more than 24 volts. These are 35s, and even the small ones, don't know whether my camera will do that. If we zoom in correctly, no, camera won't. They're also rated 35 volts. So this RAMPS board can handle 24 volts at the moment, and in every video I've seen so far, people will tell you to take out that little diode that's in there, because that supplies the voltage, the power, to the ramp, to the Arduino board below. And if you take that out, the Arduino below doesn't get any power. And then you have to put a separate power source onto the Arduino board. But that's not what I want to do. So I leave the diode in place. My RAMPS board is done. Gone it is. Here is my fake Arduino MEGA. It's a cheapo, El Cheapo version from AliExpress, but I don't care. If it's functional, if it works, I'm happy. First thing I did, which is not necessary for the conversion, but because I'm using a minimalistic setup, I removed the power plug socket. I just heated the pins from below, pulled, and gone it was. Now we can clearly see, you can also see it with the thing on, but now even more clearly, the voltage regulator that's on there. And on there is an A1117 5.0 regulator. Now the 5.0 is quite easily explained. It's 5 volts because the entire Arduino family systems work on 5 volts. And this little voltage regulator, first of all, it cannot handle too much power. I think about 500 milliamps, maybe 800 if you cool it a bit. But the downside to it is it can only translate or convert the voltage from 12 volt down to 5 volt. Or at least maximum of 12 volt. I think it does 7 to 12 volt input to 5 volt output. Now the trouble with that is if you put more than 12 volt across it, it'll blow up. And it smells really bad. Trust me, I've been there. So instead of taking the diode from the RAMPS board, I want the power from the RAMPS board to flow to a voltage regulator. But I'm going to replace this small one with a bigger one. And this one is, probably can't read it, but it's a 7805 voltage regulator. As you can see, it's a bit bigger. It is also meant for bigger power. I think this one can handle an amp and a half, so 1500 milliamps. It's a 7805 VC or CV, I believe. I'm not sure. I can't read it even with good lighting because my eyes are too bad. Anyway, just Google that. If you Google regulator 7805 1.5 amps, you'll find it. And it's a very commonly used part. The only thing we have to be aware of is that the prongs, the little legs on it, are not the same. So if you look at the pinout or the connections of this item and the connections of that one, they are not the same. If you solder left to left, middle to middle, right to right, it's going to blow up. Something's going to go haywire, and it's probably going to be the processor which gets too much power. So next thing to do is remove this one. That's what I'm going to do. So I've taken off the little tiny voltage regulator, And of course, because I'm not very good at soldering and desoldering stuff, what you can see is that this pad survived, but this pad, focus, yes, was lost, and this pad was lost as well. So I can't solder anything to that. But, as I told you in the previous part of the video, the legs, the pinout of the little A1117 are different than the ones from the 7805. The 7805 has got this ground in the middle, and I believe the left hand one is the voltage in and the right hand one is voltage out. And on this one, the left hand pin is the ground, and I think, but I don't really know for sure because I didn't bother checking, I think this middle one is 5 volts and the other one's 12. But anyway, that one is gone. And at the moment my board is fully functional. What happened? Well, what happened is fairly easy. If you look down there, it says power. V in, which can be up to 12 volts or could be up to 12 volts. Then we have, focus, 2 ground pins. Then we have 5 volts, and then we have 3.3. And now, if we turn the board around, ta-da! There's my 7805. Here we go. So, as I said, the middle pin is ground. And as you can see, I soldered both together, and it is on the 2 ground pins. The left-hand pin, because it's upside down, it's now the right-hand pin, is connected to V in. Is that true? Let's check. Yep, it is. And then the right-hand one, which is now on the left because we're looking upside down, is connected to the 5 volt. Now what makes the 3.3 volt part is another little voltage regulator, which I think is somewhere this one, or I'm not really sure. But one of those little tiny items on here is another voltage regulator turning 5 volts into 3.3. But we're not going to bother touching that because that just works. It might even be this one because this looks like a voltage regulator, even smaller than the one I removed. So 12 volt or 24 volt or any voltage lower than 35 will come from the RAMPS board down to V in. From V in, it passes through the voltage regulator. It's 5 volt connected to the 5 volt pin, so the 5 volt power running the board. And that's how I use RAMPS on a 24 volt system, providing 5 volts to the Arduino without an external voltage regulator board, or what are they called, drop-down converters or step-down converters or something like that. No extra board. I just soldered on the 7805 and it should work. I did it before, it works. This is the second one I did. Anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope you maybe want to copy this. I think it's a clean setup. And if you don't, well, I just enjoyed making the video. Okay, best of luck.